The Cincinnati Reds and really all of Major League Baseball's offseason is being held up by one player.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. We are your daily source for all things Cincinnati Reds. I'm Stephen Offenbaker. That guy over there, he's Jeff Carr. We love baseball. We love these Cincinnati Reds, and we love them so much. We've been talking about them for a combined 14 years. It's a long time. We love to bring you information about this team. We have taken our love of the game, our love of the team, and turned it into information for you. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. And on today's podcast, well, we're going to tell you how Juan Soto, that dirty guy, is impacting everything the Cincinnati Reds are trying to do right now. We're also going to talk about the Reds' not so grand relationship with free agency, historically speaking. And then our guy, Rob Manfred. Manfred hates baseball. He has struck again. We're going to tell you about hashtag Manfred hates baseball's latest gimmick that has no place in the sport of baseball. Before we get into any of that, let's shout out today's sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, Jeff, where we are going to get started is with Juan Soto greedily holding up the entire free agent offseason. This is Shohei Ohtani all over again, while everybody bites their fingernails down to the nub, waiting to find out who he's going to sign with and how much it's going to cost.
It's all about the money, Steve. And quite frankly, it's not even just about simply waiting on Juan Soto to make a decision. It's the players who are waiting on Juan Soto to make a decision. And there's lots of rumors as to who is linked to him. The Red Sox are linked to him. The Mets are linked to him. The Dodgers, lots of different teams and all this other stuff. But whoever doesn't get him is very likely to turn their attention then to signing Anthony Santander or Teoscar Hernández for their outfield spot that Juan Soto would have taken up. So all of that being said, a couple of players that the Reds are at least somewhat linked to are the ones that are waiting to see what Juan Soto makes. And there's a couple of different things off of this, Steve. There's two questions that I have. The first question is simply about guys like Santander and Teoscar Hernández. Like, should their contracts be inflated because Juan Soto's contract is inflated? Like, it should be about their personal worth and then their personal performances. But then the other question about this, and we'll answer both of these in the next couple of minutes, is should the Reds actually be in on these guys if at the end of the day their price is getting risen up by the fact that Juan Soto's price is risen up?
Well, the answer to the first question is free agents cost what they cost, and It's supply and demand. And Juan Soto is going to sign with somebody, and he's going to be the first guy to sign. It's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be the Dodgers, and they're going to defer most of his contract. That's what's going to happen. We all know it already. That's what's going to happen. And once that is done, that makes the two names you mentioned, Teoscar Hernández and Anthony Santander, the number 1 and 2 free agent outfielders on the market, with a lot of teams that need an outfielder. They're going to cost more now because they're number 1 and 2, not number 2 and 3. What that means for the Reds is if they want to fix this broken outfield that has been broken for multiple years, that they're going to have to pay more to fix now, that's on them. They should have addressed it sooner. They didn't. They have to fix the problem to be competitive, and it's going to cost Bob some cabbage. That's just the way it's going to go. Should they be in on those guys if their prices are inflated? Absolutely. And if they're not, it's an outright failure by Nick Krall.
I do believe that there might be even two answers to that question. Should they be? Yes. Will they be? Probably not. Just because based on what we know they do. And it's not that I'm trying to make an excuse for them. I'm trying to tell you that that is what this team does. Now, the qualifying offer to Nick Martinez is a bit interesting to me in this scenario because I wouldn't have thought they gave him the qualifying offer to begin with, much less him accept it. And the Reds are now paying him $21 million for this next year.
Just a quick side note on that, Jeff, that turned out to be clairvoyant. If you look at what everybody's signing for this week right now, that was a deal. They got a deal on Nick
Yeah.
Martinez at $21 million.
And that's just two of the top guys coming off the free agent list. We haven't seen Corbin Burns sign yet. He's going to get paid. You haven't seen some of the older guys like Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer sign yet. They're going to get paid if they decide they want to pitch next year. So the $21 million may actually look like a bargain, like you said. But with that, it makes me do wonder if they are a little bit more apt. I still lean toward no, but if they might be a little bit more apt to chase a Santander or a Hernandez. But I find that intriguing. The other part of this, and this really stems more from the Soto side of things, is that I've heard reporting and watching the Hot Stove show on MLB Network, they were talking about this, that the Boston Red Sox are throwing out all the stops. Big Papi is welcoming Juan Soto to Boston and basically selling Soto on the idea of joining the Red Sox. Now, Big Papi notwithstanding, I mean, I think Big Papi's awesome. Always been a big fan. Who is the guy that if you wanted, like, let's say it came down to the Reds had the right numbers, the Reds had the right years for Santander or Teoscar Hernández, who's rolling out the welcome wagon in Cincinnati to get that dude here? What former player are you picking to be the, best friend at the airport?
Well, they have alienated the best friend at the airport, and that relationship is not healed yet. So until you can get Joey Votto to bring guys to town and talk to them about the joys of hitting at Great American Ballpark, there really isn't anybody to fill that role, really. I mean, I guess by default, it's Barry Larkin. That's the guy.
I would say Eric Davis. When you do Eric Davis?
Maybe you could do Eric Davis, but
yeah.
I'll broaden that picture. It's somebody from the 90s, and that's a real problem.
Yes, true. Yeah.
It's somebody from the 90s. That's the best you can do with this team because you can't use Joey. So for me, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that the guys that you're going to get to come to Cincinnati are going to get swayed that way. The guys that come to Cincinnati, you're going to sway them with, here's what you're going to be able to do in this ballpark. Here's what happens with the park effects. Here's, how much this city is going to love you kind of situation versus, what Boston's doing with Soto. And it's interesting to me that Boston's doing that. I mean, if I were the Dodgers, and again, I hate the Dodgers right now, but if I were the Dodgers, I would have a day where I had Juan Soto in town, schedule his come check out Dodger Stadium, wine and dine day or whatever. And when he got there, I would have made it so that the rest of the team is there. And I would have him just line up along the first baseline with a gap where he was going to hit in that order. And I would say, that's going to be your spot. That's going to be your team. Here's what we're going to pay you. Just tell us the number. It should be done.
They've even got the star power on the ownership group. Like Magic Johnson could pick him up from the airport and just be like, what's up, dude? You want to come to LA? Like the Reds
limo full of Laker girls.
Right. And I'm with you. The Reds don't have that guy, at least not anywhere near between the 90s and now. Like Eric Davis, Barry Larkin, maybe. Like my brain was just going through all these different Reds that we've seen over the last 15 years and really dove into like the obscure Reds and not even the most obscure. Like I was thinking, like, is Marlon Byrd going to be at the airport? We're going to have like, Zach Kozart standing, maybe Paul Janisch going to be welcoming people to Cincinnati. Maybe we could see, I don't know, Brandon Phillips or, I mean, we don't even have to get that obscure, but when you think about these guys in the terms of the history of this franchise, like it's just a bummer because I don't feel like the Reds have a Big Papi that they could put out there. And it's just like, because this dude came to say, hey to me, I'm really more interested in Cincinnati than I already was. Like they'd almost have to go across the way and be like, Joey B, look, I know you're getting hit a lot behind the line of scrimmage. Your defense isn't helping you out, but can you come get us a free agent here for the baseball team? I think that would be one of you're not making the playoffs. We get that. So maybe you can spend some of your effort helping out the baseball team.
Let me ask you this, just as let's go down a side trip rabbit hole for the last minute here of this segment. Would the big Papi effect be as much as it is if he wasn't on the national baseball shows as a commentator? I mean, I know he was great during his time in Boston, but is the fact that we still see him every day and he's in everybody's living room talking baseball, that makes it more impactful, right? That takes the playing career times the broadcasting. So what I need is for Joey Votto to get a broadcasting job right now. so that in a year or two, Joey can be that guy for the Reds. Need him talking baseball with everybody every day for a couple years, and then we can use him as our recruiter.
I mean, I guess the real answer with all of this is, you know what great ambassador that they got to get somebody to come to Cincinnati? Terry Francona. But as it stands, Juan Soto is the man that is holding up everything this offseason. If you're like, man, where's our rumors? Where's our updates? Are the Reds close on anybody? What's happening? Until Juan Soto signs, the answer is nothing right now. But you know, Steve, the biggest issue with the Reds' player acquisition strategy over the last few years hasn't been solely dependent on a lack of spending. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need in one place when it comes to live bets in the NFL, because they've got stats, they've got scores, they've got all the biggest highlights and play-by-play and so much more, all on the same place that you make your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And while you're there, you can take a look at next year's odds to win the National League. FanDuel has the Reds at 33-1 odds to get that NL pennant. Those odds are actually the same as the St. Louis Cardinals and better than the San Francisco Giants. Very interesting. Obviously, they're still long, but there's always a shot. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We are talking about the Cincinnati Reds here today, all day, every week, every month, all year long. Make sure you subscribe to get at least 30 minutes of Reds talk in your feed every single day. All right, Steve, I mentioned this. It's not for a lack of spending totally. It's also how well they spend in free agency. I wrote something for SI.com, InsideTheReds.com, about this, looking back at just the last 5 years, really kind of honing in on the time where Nick Krall was either the general manager under Dick Williams, the general manager in charge of everything, or now the president of baseball ops in charge of everything, and the different multi-year contracts that the Reds have handed out. And quite frankly, Steve, it wasn't just because they didn't spend a ton of money. It wasn't just because they didn't get all the top flight guys. It was the guys they ultimately chose to spend the money on. They had 7 different multi-year contracts to free agents. And it's just not great, man. When you put that all together, the production is pretty bad. So, like, it's something, and I'm not saying this in terms of, well, don't spend money at all. I'm saying this, you got to get better at what you spend your money on.
Yeah, because a couple of the names on this list, let's start with our favorite. Let's start with our favorite guy on this list, at least from the standpoint of we thought providing jerseys that would fit us in the grab bags. Turns out not so much. But Mike Moustakas, when he was signed by this team, it was the largest free agent contract in the history of the Reds. 4 years, $64 million. We thought, all right, game changer. This guy's going to be great. He's going to come in here. We're setting the tone. The Reds are going for it. They are going to try and win. Here we go. A negative 1.6 BWAR during his time in Cincinnati. Couldn't hit, couldn't field, couldn't throw, couldn't even provide a jersey that fit us. All of the things went wrong, Jeff.
Well, and it's funny too, because like if you remember when the Reds signed him, it was pre-Reds Fest. He was at Reds Fest there before the off season of 2019 into 2020. He was there signing autographs in person, excited, ready to go. And you were thinking, boy, that's an investment. They're ready to go for it here in 2020. We had marked that year as a big year that they were going to go for it with the players that they had. And then, of course, COVID happened and changed all of that. But like a month, I think it was about a month and a half after they signed Mike Moustakas, they signed another guy to a similar contract, 4 years, $64 million, but a bunch of opt-outs for Nick Castellanos. They basically lured him to Cincinnati with also the idea that if he had a really good year at Great American Ballpark, he could opt out and go make more money, which he did do. So it all worked out in the end for him. what was interesting about Nick Castellanos, Steve, when you look back at his time here, there's the 2 seasons that he played, he had more WAR, according to Baseball Reference, 3.4 wins above replacement, than he has had in the 3 years that he's been in Philadelphia. So as good as he's been for Philly and playing in the playoffs and all this other stuff, he wasn't as good as he was here in Cincy. It always kind of makes me wish we would have had him for a little bit longer, but I get it. From his perspective, he wanted to make that cash.
I thought the Nick Castellanos contract was the Reds' best attempt at making
Top
do in
flight player, yeah.
at the free agent market for a top flight player. I thought this was the most creative, smartest deal they've ever put together for a free agent transaction. And that's because of those multiple opt-outs and the way this contract was structured. It really was favoring the player, which is not something that, the front office of a team will hang their hat on. We favored that player, but they did what they had to do to get the guy here. And ultimately it benefited the Reds with a tremendous season. If COVID hadn't happened and Castellanos had that season, his first year in Cincinnati versus a second, because he's on record as saying the COVID rules and the way things were done and the empty stadiums and all the things completely threw him off his game and really disrupted what he does. But if it had been a normal baseball season in 2020 and Castellanos comes in and does what he does in 2021, he's probably a 1-year guy here, and it worked out great for the player. It still worked out great for the player, and it worked out great for the Reds. I look at that deal, and I think there were a lot of lessons to be learned from that deal that the Reds could do. We know they need an outfielder. Give Anthony Santander a 3-year deal with 2 opt-outs, pay him $25 million a year, and let's get an outfielder in here. You could learn a lot from that contract that they gave Nick Castellanos.
Yeah, and so we go from a thumbs down in Moose to a thumbs up in Nick Casty, and then we go back to a thumbs down, at least for right now, because there's still kind of an open verdict on this. But Jeimer Candelario is the 3rd biggest free agent contract that we've had in the Nick Krall era. 3 years and $45 million. He also has a club option, I think, for a 4th year, but I forgot to write that down in our notes. But yeah, he's a negative WAR player right now, negative 0.6. So we go up a little bit and we come back down. And then we've got Nick Martinez, who is also still here, but his 2-year deal was cut short at 1 year because he didn't pick up his player option. His total contract that he signed last offseason was for $26 million. He now makes $21 million this year because of the qualifying offer. So you got to at least give a thumbs up to that for the 1 year that it did work. Hopefully it continues to work this year. He got 4 wins above replacement last year.
I'm indifferent on Nick Martinez's contract. I think that it was a good deal for the Reds last year, and it's a good deal for Martinez this year with the opt-out return on the qualifying. I think if you take the 2 years together, no matter what happens on the field, just from a financial standpoint, the Reds got their money's worth last year. And Nick Martinez did a lot of great things, especially the last couple months of the season. He did everything the Reds asked him to do and really took what would have otherwise just been god-awful rotation and made it just a bad rotation because, he was the only thing to come and see at points there. No matter what happens on the field now this year, contract favors him a little bit. And if he comes out and pitches like he did last year, this year, well, the Reds win again. So I don't mind that contract at all. And as far as Jeimer goes, I don't know what he would have to do in order for me to think this was a good signing. I guess he's got 2 years remaining, Jeff. Let's say 6 WAR this coming season and next total. So 3 WAR a season. We would consider that okay.
But then that still means that he's a total of 5.5 WAR over 3 years.
It's
not
great. I mean,
it's tough, man, because he's gotta be that guy. Because history would tell us not both of CES and Noelvi Marte are about to have a good year. So if he can buoy that, if one of those 2 guys struggles and he can be the guy that picks up the slack, then I think that's going to help. But I'm with you. I don't know that there is a way that he can live up to the contract that he signed here. He's got to be really good.
I think if he plays well, he could put us into the it was all right. I don't know that we're ever going to be able to look at that and be like, oh, it's a good deal. I'm glad they signed him. I think we'll just kind of land it.
Which is better than the next guy, as much as I hate to admit it.
Listen, the next guy, I'm stealing this one from you. Shogo Akiyama. Now, look, it was a disaster. It was a
Yeah.
train wreck. We all wanted him to be great. Cincinnati did not like this guy. The city, I'm a firm believer that if a place doesn't want you around, it will do things to you until you leave. And Cincinnati dropped a tree on his wife. They did not
The
want
aura,
the
the aura
Akiyamas.
of this town. Yeah.
They wanted him out. They wanted him out. The only more Cincinnati telling you that you have to leave is if you accidentally fell into a vat of Skyline or something. Like there's no other, like you need to go. But what I want to say here though is this was the one deal where the Reds went completely out of everything they've ever done, and they sent teams of people to Japan and wooed Shogo Akiyama into coming and signing. Now, I wish that could have been for an Ohtani or one of these other players coming from Japan that actually ended up being good. But at the time, it wasn't just the Reds going after Akiyama. There were a lot of bidders on Akiyama, and Dick Williams put together the package and the presentation to win this guy over. And ultimately, I think this also was Dick Williams' undoing. I think this signing is what ultimately led for him to being over there at Skyline now, because this didn't work out. It was a total disaster. And I have a feeling, we'll never know for sure, that there was a conversation after this between Phil Castellini and Dick Williams that took place that went along the lines of, dude, we are never, ever doing that again. We're done letting you spend all this money. I really think that's how it went. And Dick Williams said, see ya, I'm off to Skyline.
So there you go. Skyline was involved in this. And then you also go to Emilio Pagan. He's currently in the middle of a 2-year deal. The 2 years was a player option that he picked up for the second year. Injuries, a couple of different injuries really messed up last year for him. He only had 0.4 wins above replacement. But then you go to Wade Miley, the guy that really picks all this up. And quite frankly, Wade Miley did a lot of picking up when he was here in Cincinnati, picked up the spirits of the city, even in 2021, where the Reds kept fighting for the playoffs and never quite got there, but they were close. And a big reason why was because of Wade Miley. He had 5.2 wins above replacement for his time here in Cincinnati. And I think he was actually negative in 2020. So that tells you how good he was in 2021 and how well he pitched. But you put all this together, Stephen, where I'm getting to with this war talk is that for these 7 players over 5 seasons total put up 10.5 wins above replacement. For reference, because you might be thinking, well, that doesn't sound that bad, guys. Why are you guys getting so negative? For reference, Aaron Judge by himself had 10.8 wins above replacement just last year. So, yeah, I get it. I picked the best player in the league, but I did that for a reason. You had one guy that was worth 7 dudes over 5 seasons. He put that together in 1 year.
And
so that tells you where the Reds have been in free agency.
And if my math is correct, Jeff, I did this before when we were talking. If my math is correct, it could be wrong, but I think it's right. Per player per year, that breaks down to 0.29 WAR per player per year to get to your 10 WAR total there. That's not great, Bob.
That kind of number, my goodness, just looking at this last year's roster, that means that the entirety of them on average was worth what Jake Fraley put up last year.
There you go. Listen, this is what we know, Jeff. You take all of this, you look at their free agent history, you look at how it's gone, and you look at the resources available, and this leaves you with one takeaway, which is the Reds really, really need to spend more wisely. All right, but enough of that talk, because I want to talk about this. Rob Manfred is at it again. We're going to tell you about his idea for a golden ticket at bat. Coming up next. You can take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets, NFL tickets, NHL, NBA, all of the tickets. They got you covered over at Game Time. You just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Jeff and I tell you about this site all the time because we use it all the time. We head down to the banks, we post up at our favorite spot, get a couple drinks, have some food, and then right about time for first pitch, we jump on the Game Time app, we find our deal, and we head into the ballpark. It's that easy. If you're heading to a stadium that you don't know, they have a view from your seat, and you're going to know exactly what you're going to pay for that seat because they have all in pricing. Again, all you have to do is download that Game Time app, create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create your account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off already incredibly low prices. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. If you can't catch us here on YouTube, we are in all of the podcasting audio feeds. You can take us to the gym. I need to go to the gym. You can take us in your car. You can take us with you on a walk, whatever you're doing. If you can't be watching us, you can be listening to us. Just find us in your favorite podcasting app. And if you can't find us, let Jeff know. I'm sure he can make it happen for you. All right. Hashtag Manfred hates baseball has struck again. Jeff, I don't know if you saw this, but over in The Athletic, Jason Stark has an article talking about Manfred's latest and greatest brain cramp, whereby he wants to create a golden ticket, a golden at-bat, bases loaded, bottom of the ninth inning. Noelvi Marte is up. Terry Francona calls timeout, and he walks out with his golden ticket, and he hands it to CB Buckner. And he says, we're going with Ty Steve right here. Doesn't matter that he's already in the batting order. Doesn't matter that he's already made the last out 2 batters before. No, here comes Ty Steve. The nuts and bolts of this have not been completely decided, Jeff, but that's the gist. You can bring your ticket out and point to the bench and say, I want that guy to bat. Doesn't matter where he's in or out of the game, where he's at in the lineup. None of it matters. That's what Manfred wants to do. Your thoughts?
My first takeaway is maybe we should create a golden rule for Rob Manfred. Thou shalt not touch the rules of baseball anymore henceforth. Because quite frankly, Steve, it's just getting ridiculous. Like, what are we doing? I get it. This isn't like monumental changes, like they're adding a 5th base or something like that. But this is weird. This is taking baseball and making it an arcade version of itself. Because you start doing this, and even Jason Stark, like the example that you used was a very Red specific example. Jason Stark used the example of the playoff game with the Guardians and the Yankees in the 10th inning when the Yankees had the bases loaded and Oswaldo Peraza was up to bat. And it's just like, imagine if they could be like, nah, we want Juan Soto to bat in this case. And he also acknowledged, Jason Stark acknowledged, that there are multiple details being bandied about of how this could be implemented, where it's only able to be implemented in the 7th inning or later. It's only be able to be implemented by the team that is trailing. It could be implemented whenever during the game. You know when I think it should be implemented? Never. This is a horrible idea.
Exactly. Listen, I was thinking about something you said during prep. And again, we should start recording those because there's lots of good stuff in there sometimes. But you said, Manfred's trying to make the baseball into an arcade version of itself. And I can see that because I'm pretty sure that he was probably the kid that every time he went outside, someone took his lunch money. So he was inside playing video games. But what I think is more accurate, I think a better description is that Rob Manfred is trying to turn baseball into a reality show. Rob Manfred wants the pitcher to have to walk to home plate and present a rose to the batter if he wants to give him an intentional walk. And if the batter accepts, he gets to go to first base. He wants to make it an Uno game where the manager can come out and slap down the skip card, and now Ellie De La Cruz can't bat. He wants to make it where the manager can
go dig up an immunity idol in center field.
He wants to make it where the Reds are playing the Yankees and Francona can saunter to home plate and say, Aaron Judge is batting for us this at bat. That's what Manfred wants. He doesn't care about baseball. He hates baseball. I've been saying this for years, and people say that I'm overly critical about Rob Manfred. The guy is terrible for the sport because he doesn't care about the sport. He cares about making money for the owners. He doesn't care about the integrity of the game. He doesn't care about how things have been for all of time in history of this sport. The commissioner's office was created to protect the sport, and Bud Selig screwed that up so bad that I don't know that we can ever go back again. But what I can tell you is the commissioner is no longer in charge of protecting baseball. The commissioner is no longer in charge of making sure that this sport lasts in perpetuity. All as he's worried about is making 10 more cents, and it's driving me crazy. And that's all that this move is about. It's about creating more ratings, and I don't even think it's going to do that. It's about adding adding suspense where suspense doesn't exist. And here's what it takes away for the longtime baseball fans, for the guys my age or older. It takes away the moments for dudes like Francisco Cabrera, dudes that shouldn't be in a game, shouldn't be able to hit, and yet they score, they hit the ball, and Sid Bream rounds third and barely beats Barry Bonds for throw to the plate. Those are the moments that Manfred wants to take away. Why would you want to take that away? That's what makes baseball great. We're the little guy that shouldn't, can, and does. That's what happens when guys get thrust into moments because it's their turn in the batting order. That's what this sport is about, and Manfred wants to screw it up.
I really hope our friend Ethan doesn't watch that bit. He doesn't like that play. Our friend Ethan over at Locked On Pirates. But yeah, no, that there's so much about this that I just the big question is, what is it fixing? Like, where did he just have a bourbon one day and just be like, you know what would be great?
Oh,
Like,
that cat's drinking like Smirnoff Ice, dude. Don't give him that kind of credit.
Yeah, Mike's hired. Mike's hired. But what is this fixing? This doesn't fix anything. Like, at least he could say, such and such is for player safety, or such and such is because the game is too long, or whatever the reason. He can't say any of that with this, because the only thing that this is fixing is taking the bat out of the hands of Luke Maile and handing it to Ellie De La Cruz, or handing it to Tyler Stevenson and saying, yeah, we get it. You're on this team for this reason. It's not because you can hit runners in. And I'm with you. Like, there's something about baseball that was lost a little bit. And as much as I am okay with the universal DH, we lost the pitcher hitting. And that was fun very few times a year, but those few times it was really fun. And
I don't remember a lot of home runs from when I was a kid growing up. I mean, I remember the fireworks. I remember, being in the red seats at Riverfront and everything shaking when the fireworks went off, that kind of stuff. But you know what I do remember? A business day special in 1991 where Chris Hammond comes to the plate and homers for the Reds. I remember that because it was pitchers hitting long balls, and it sticks in your mind. And yeah, we lost stuff, Jeff. We lose things for this commercialization of making 10 cents more.
Micah Owings wouldn't have been a thing if he couldn't have hit. So, I mean, maybe he becomes like a Rick Ankiel or something. But yeah, like he was on the roster to be a relief pitcher that also got to hit if you needed him to. And he was like a weird two-way player back then, because he was not a good pitcher.
Kind of like what Mikey Biceps wanted to be.
Right. Except he was a good pitcher, or at least a decent pitcher. Yeah, it's just, I don't like this at all. There's nothing that is solved by this. There are problems that are then created by this. Like, you would take guys like Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani, the guys that are already like inching toward $1 billion contract, and you would give them even more ability to get to that $1 billion. And that's all fine and good and stuff. But at some point, they're all going to be Dodgers because of the deferred bank and trust and loan that's there in Los Angeles. And they just sign everybody. And then, hey, we got all the golden tickets. Sure, we can only use one a game, but our manager's going to come up and be like, you know what? We're going to use our golden ticket and call on, oh, wait, the guy that's in the on deck circle, he's going to be the guy that hits when the bases are loaded. So
that's where we're going to end this before you send me on another Dodgers rant. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks, as always, for making us your first listen every day, folks. Go check out Paul Francis Sullivan. You can call him Sully over on the Locked On MLB podcast. Make them your second listen. Sully knows everything about baseball, and he can tell it to you with a tremendous sense of humor. If you haven't checked him out, go check him out. Covers the national landscape of baseball every single day as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Until next time, we're going to continue to listen to the rumors. We're going to continue to gather up the news. We're going to continue to be mad at Rob Manfred, and we're going to bring all of that back here and keep you Locked On Reds every single day. You think I'm off of Manfred's Christmas card list yet?
I've got a golden ticket. I think the managers have to sing that as they're walking up to use.
Yeah.